It was September 1st, 2015, and I'm sleeping. It had to be early in the morning, between like 8 o'clock and 9 a.m. I had just gotten off the night before because I worked 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., 1,700 to 0,500 hours. And I didn't get that much sleep at all, and my phone rings, and it's my buddy Pete, and it's like early. He knows I work midnight, so I'm like, man, is something wrong? Pick up the phone. He's like, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, I heard about a cop getting shot and killed. I was like, what? So that day, for those of you who may know this story, I've never talked about this story, but we're going to talk about it today. It was the Fox Lake Police Lieutenant Charles G.I. Joe Gliniewicz, the murder-suicide that was just international news, and it really rocked our town at the time. And it was the biggest lie in our area all over the place. Now, I don't have too many receipts for this one at all. All I'm going to tell you is the information that I witnessed, that I was around, and I was really privy to after I left law enforcement. Man, when they sat there and said, man, the phone would ring off the hook and people were telling me stuff. So I'm not doing anything but, what would you say? It's assumed conjecture on my part, coming from the mouths of certain people that they're not going to come on and talk about, but I will absolutely tell you what they told me, and their stuff is going to be challenged. So this is G.I. Joe Gliniewicz. I never met him. I never worked with him. He was a beloved figure in the Fox Lake area. I worked at the time for Round Lake Park, Illinois, and Fox Lake was not that far from us at all. For those who may remember, the initial call came out just around early morning between 6 and 7 a.m. in Fox Lake, Illinois. Fox Lake Police Lieutenant Charles G.I. Joe Gliniewicz calls out that he was in an area where he was out with three subjects. Very early morning. I guess he was on his way into work, and he's out with 3. And the next thing you know, I guess there's dispatch audio of one of the cops going to check on him because he wasn't responding to status checks from dispatch, and you hear officer down, and it was just melee. What we knew at the time, what we were told at the time, was that 3 men had gunned him down. We were looking for 1 white guy and 2 black guys, and it was a manhunt. There were 400 cops on the scene. I was not a part of that. I immediately called my deputy chief, Dan Birch, and I said, do you want me to come in? He goes, no, we're fine. They had our K-9 was there. We had the FBI was there, the Illinois State Police, Lake County. Tons of agencies were there. It was insane. For the next 2 months in that area, the drama was exposed. It was so high stress. It was an insane emotional roller coaster. The funeral for it was one of the most moving things I'd ever been to at the time. And we were all lied to. Or so I wonder, as we're going to talk about today. Now, this was a video that was made, and 3 years ago, I started to watch this. Here's my comment from my Wing Chun channel, and this was 3 years ago. I said I was a cop in the area on that day during the whole thing. I've always wondered, and there's some comments I have, and I even reached out to this guy who did this video, and he never responded. I said, I have some information to add to this, so let's watch this together. I've got some stuff ready to go that maybe you as the viewer need to hear and make a decision on, because every time we talk about police corruption, we always talk about the big areas, right? Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. We never talk about the little departments out in the suburbs where these people get away with murder. And I'm a little bit suspect about this death investigation and the connections to the people who are involved, and I'm going to talk about it today. So let's watch this together, and let's have a conversation.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, we're going to talk about the big dog. That's G.I. Joe. Big Joe head on him. Wait till you get a load of this one, right? Because he was quite the character, and this was quite the mystery, right? Twisting and turning. It was a saga, to be sure. Buckle up. Larger than life, LT Joe Gliniewicz lived and policed the town of Fox Lake, Illinois. He was an all-American hunk of badass, is what most people thought, but as we see time and time again, there was a hell of a lot more to this one than, what meets the old eyeball. Oh, spoiler alert. Let's give it a go.
So I'm going to tell you what I experienced at that time, what I saw. Never met the man, but I just, this was one of the most screwed up things Lake County's ever seen.
The people, we gotta get to know the place, and that place is Fox Lake. Named so, apparently, because the shape of the lake looks like a fox. They failed to describe what kind of foxes they have up there, though. Obviously, the lake-shaped kind. It's home to about 11,000 people, and it's approximately an hour from the heart of Chicago. It's all about lakes up there, though. Are you an aquatic fanatic? Then
because it's called Lake County, Illinois.
Like the heart of the chain of lakes, I'm told. There's a lot of bars, a lot of nature, and a lot of vacation homes empty most of the year. Move slowly up at Fox Lake, get your feet wet, is I'm sure what the ads would say. You get the picture. So this is really super interesting and all, and I could go on about Fox Lake for the next 20 minutes, but I won't, because I have a story to tell. A story that begins where we began.
Fox Lake. How do I say this without being too rude? It's kind of hillbilly-ish. When you go up to the Lake County area where I was a cop, you had all of the element that were either chased, the criminal element that was chased out of Chicago and Milwaukee. When I first got hired in 2001, my uncle found out. He was a Chicago fire lieutenant at the Cabrini Greenhouse before Cabrini Green was torn down. He was there from late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I don't get along with him at all. He's my mother's brother, and he's just a guy that we have confrontations with. But he's expressed his level of pride with me the day that he found out that I was becoming a police officer up in the Round Lake area. And he goes, that's where all the Cabrini Green people moved out, and after we chased them out, after CPD chased them out. And they had advertisements for moved to beautiful Round Lake Beach, and they lived, there was an apartment complex called Cedar Villas, and we had a lot of problems there. Milwaukee chased their element out too. In that area of Lake County, you have Round Lake, Fox Lake. If you were, I said this all the time, if you were black and you moved in the area, you moved there because, you were chased out of the city, so to speak. And that's not saying all black people are criminals. Lots and lots and lots of Hispanic. It has got to be 65+% Hispanic in the Lake County area. It just is what it is. But I've said, if you're white, you've lived there all your life, and there's a running joke in the area saying that the toothbrush was invented in Lake County because otherwise it would be called a teeth brush everywhere else. That other area, we have Waukegan. We have North Chicago. A lot of you know Matthew Thornton, Detective Matt Thornton. He is in Zion, Illinois. We worked at the same time. We never knew each other. We were not that far from each other at all. And it's always like, man, we never ran into each other at court. So the area, it's not, you have some extremely affluent areas in Lake County, like Lake Forest, where all the Chicago Bulls and Bears players live, and you get the $1 million homes. And you have some incredibly poor areas. Lake County, Illinois, from what I was told, has got to be, I believe it's like the number 2 most affluent county in the nation at one time. But the crime level there is insane because of the easy flow to Milwaukee and Chicago. So it's not a picturesque town. You have a ton of bars on the chain of lakes, lots of fights. Fox Lake cops are always humping. They're always working. So it kills me every time somebody's like, oh, I'm a Chicago cop and you're just a suburban cop. It's like, no, Round Lake, Zion, Waukegan, Fox Lake, those guys work their asses off with some real shit element of people. So when it comes to that, this was not a sleepy town. This was a busy town, and these cops worked for a living.
On the 1st of September 2015. That morning, summer was on the out, much like the tourists, and autumn was
It was a hot day that day. It was unbelievable. We were sweating like crazy because I did go in that night.
88 Fahrenheit. That morning, Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz was on his way into the Fox Lake Police Department for just another day on the rig. He was, get a load of this, just a few weeks from retirement. Life imitates art, and he was a well-liked, well-respected lad in the area.
He was beloved.
A man about town for the past almost exactly 30 years. He became a member of the Village of Fox Lake Police Department in April of 1985. However, that morning as he was driving from his home in nearby Antioch, driving on his usual route into work, he saw something that he was not a fan of. He saw 3 suspicious lads near an abandoned...
Yeah, that is Antioch, Illinois, where Kyle Rittenhouse is also from, just in case you guys caught that one.
...cement plant on the edge of town, and suspected they were up to no good. He radioed in at 7:52 a.m.
Okay. There's 2 male whites and 1 black. Now, not for nothing, it's not uncommon to call out that you're out with 3 and you wave dispatch. A lot of us didn't call for backup back then. That's the difference between us and CPD. We pull you over. We don't have 20 cars all standing around you, intimidating you. We did our work by ourselves. So it's not uncommon, especially 7 o'clock in the morning. You got 3 people in a suspicious area. A lot of times, it diffuses. This is where a lot of you people talk about, well, cops trying to humanize it. We don't bust balls. Hey, what are you guys doing here? What's going on? It's an abandoned plant. You guys need anything? We bullshit. We talk to people, and especially when you're a seasoned officer of his caliber, you don't need it. You just don't. You know the area, you know the people, you know the players, and you waved off dispatch, or you waved off backup. So it wasn't that uncommon to be out with 2 or 3 subjects by yourself and not call for backup.
A few minutes later, he called in again, saying he was after them, and he called for backup.
740, 10-4, did you need a second unit? Yeah, go ahead, start.
So just like that, that's not a cry for help. That's not a broken arrow. They took off into the swamp. That's not a broken arrow. That's like, oh my God, send a unit. He goes, yeah, you can start somebody. We used to say all the time, 10-2, float another. Floating another or starting somebody, that's not an exigent circumstance where you have to go lighten sirens. We took our time to that kind of stuff. I don't know how Fox Lake's policy was, but for us, for the most part, unless you said send another, or you said it with that urgency, we didn't go code. We didn't go lights and sirens. We took our time to get to being a backup position.
It only took responding officers a handful of minutes to arrive after him, at 8:01, small town and all that. When they did, they found Joe's car parked on the road, looked normal, but no sign of Lieutenant Joe or Annie near the wells. They spread out and saw neither hide nor hair of anyone. The place was quiet as summer ends, until they heard a single gunshot.
740, what's your location?
Looks like unit 6740, checking your status.
792 on location. Try him on his cell phone, please.
Fox Lake units on honing, checking status on 6740.
We don't have him right now. We're looking for him.
Now, this is where your skin might start crawling a little bit, and you might start feeling a little bit sick to your stomach. When somebody doesn't answer the status, it's a little unnerving. I'm not a fan of those TikTok cops who play the music of, the drama. Like, oh my God, my partner's out. They make a mockery out of when somebody doesn't check their status, and it's a shitty feeling. So this is one of those things where your heart sinks a little bit in your stomach.
They were unable to get through to Joe. Following the source of the gunshot, as it took them closer to the brush and the swamp, on the ground they found a body. It was Joe Gliniewicz.
32, we got an officer down, 6732, officer down at the swamp. Send everybody you possibly can, officer is down.
That's where you go flying. That's where you put your fucking lights and siren on and you haul ass. You go fucking light speed there.
He was lying face down, right, and when they turned him over, blood just poured out of his nose and his mouth. He had been shot twice, though one of the shots didn't break his body armor. His gun was missing. Nearby they found his pepper spray. It had just been used. His police baton also nearby, and it looked like there had been a fight, some kind of struggle. His bits and bobs were basically all around the place.
Went from scene, taking the officer's sidearm, shots were fired.
Whatever happened, whoever Joe, ran into, he had used everything. at his disposal. Worst of all, there was no sign of any of the three men who had just murdered a police officer. So let's get to know a little bit more about G.I. Joe and his wicked sense of humor.
Now, at the time, this really fucked us all up. We were devastated. We were angry. We were just completely mortified. We barely had shootings up there. We went hands-on all the time, but it never resulted in anybody being shooting. Trying to think. I mean, yeah, I was on a scene for a shooting, but it was a dog. I wasn't on a scene, but I was on duty. We're just a couple blocks away. One of our guys shot at a person in a car, shooting him in the face. It was a kid who stole a car, and he just crashed. It was that was a nightmare call. We had shootings, but we didn't have them like this, and we sure as shit never had a cop shot and killed before. So this one really rattled us, and that's all we knew at the time. We were looking for three people. We were all angry. We were all upset. We were all heightened and aware. And that night when I went in, every one of us we were stuck between staying out of Lake County Major Crimes Task Force's way and then stopping every car there we could find probable cause on to do an investigation. Now, keep in mind, this was a police officer that was shot and killed. That was the crime. And the agency that did the investigation, this is very important to keep track on if you're playing at home and taking notes. The agency that did the investigation was Lake County Major Crimes Task Force. It wasn't Illinois State Police, and it wasn't Lake County Sheriff Mark Curran at the time. It was Lake County Major Crimes Task Force. The commander for that task force was a man named George Falenko, who happened to be my chief of police at the time. So we did feel this level of just swelling pride that our chief was on the case, our chief was going to solve this, our chief was going to get these fuckers, and it was going to be a good day. That's the air of where our mindsets was at that time and for the next several months afterwards.
The perfect card.
Keep in mind, I haven't watched this video. I didn't even get 3 minutes into this because at the time I was so outraged at the truth of what I knew to happen at the time. During this time, now, I don't know what he's going to talk about because this video is going to show some discrediting in the character of Charles Joseph Gliniewicz, but he was idolized. He was adored. He was so held in high regard. The funeral at that time, I have never seen. Oh man, still gets me a little bit choked up. At the time, I was driving one of our squad cars in it. I was crying my eyes out with just people side to side for fucking miles. His funeral was the 15th. No. Oh, when was it that day? Oh gosh, it was maybe the 7th. It was a bad morning. I had a guy who totaled his car on his ex-wife's mother's house and tried to kick in her door, and he was high on shit, and he ripped the mailbox out of the front lawn and he threw it through the window. I had been working on that case since 5 a.m. and we had the funeral to go to several hours later. I was exhausted, and the funeral just was miles and miles and miles of every resident from Antioch to Fox Lake and every town in between on the side of the road. We had more boats. It was so moving. We had more boats all over the Fox Lake. When we went over the bridge, it's all you could see, boats. It was insane. We had out-of-state squad cars. New York were there. We had people there from England at the funeral. It was incredible. So at the time, we just knew that we had lost one of the greatest police officers at the time. There were guys who got tattoos of the G.I. Joe, like the old cartoon logo, was it the Hasbro toy? They got G.I. Joe tattoos to honor him on themselves, like within a week. So we took this very serious, very somber, and it affected all of us.
The original G.I. Joe, his Facebook username, actual name Charles Joseph, was born in 1963 in Libertyville, a native Illinois boy, I don't know. He went on to high school in and would later reside in Antioch, another small town just up the road from Fox Lake. In 1980, he joined the US Army, where he got a fair few medals, fair play to him. In 84, he completed his active duty and was assigned to the National Guard, and so he decided to look for any positions with the boys in blue. And so he joined the Fox Lake Police Department in 1985, where he would remain until his death 30 years later.
Officer Bostic stood by right here and started yelling for the kids to come to the light. I was able to locate one of the children that was hiding underneath one of the plastic play toys over here.
In 1989, he married a woman named Melody, and together they would have 4 children, 4 boys. As a member of the force, he held a good, few positions: canine, field training, SWAT, and he became Sarge Joe in 2000. He got a few decorations during his tenure. In 2005, he was awarded Illinois State Law Enforcement Volunteer of the Year. Look at you! And he had countless recommendations about how helpful he was. But it was really in 1986, after being in the department for about a year, that's when he basically became head of the Fox Lake Police Explorer position. And that's how he became well known.
The Explorer position is when you get like younger. I was Explorer for a couple of, maybe a couple of months when I was a kid. And they were police programs for the town. Mine was for Hoffman Estates, Illinois, where I lived. And you got to know what it was like to be a police officer. And as a kid, to kind of like groom people for the position. So he dealt with juveniles, people under the age of 21 who want to get involved with the program to later on venture out to be a position of a cop. It's a status of positive influence, mentoring for young people in the community.
Respected and loved in Fox Lake. The Police Explorer program is kind of what it sounds like. Kids, teens interested in a career in law enforcement can join up and get a taste of what it's like.
Guys in the back, get back here towards the back real quick. Kyle Klein. Excellent job on your cover.
Oh, the rumors are
So you have the weapons like that? Give me a handgun. I was just showing Hess this.
Okay.
Take your weapon.
Let the rumors fly.
Your body's the platform.
Security, move! Please!
What are you yelling, sweetheart?
It's like doing work experience for cops. You get to do some training, some ride-alongs. They teach you how to do admin stuff, administer alcohol tests, report writing, basic training in SWAT and weapons, that sort of stuff. He was a real G.I. Joe. Sure how to look at a buzz cut to his fit, and he smoked like a chimney. It really helped tie Joe to the community and to the youth. So when Joe was murdered, you can really see how this would be a loss felt across the lake, and so the resulting manhunt would be massive.
It is a massive manhunt for 3 suspects in the murder of a suburban police officer. It is now in its 14th hour.
From the air and on the ground, a massive, intensive manhunt for the killers of a veteran police officer.
Behind me, this strip mall parking lot has been transformed into a command center with a singular goal tonight: to catch 3 alleged cop killers.
Locking doors.
Not only did Fox Lake lose a family member, I lost a very dear friend.
For hours, police have been following every lead. Calls from the public pouring in, reporting anything out of the ordinary.
He did everything by the book, and I don't know how anyone could have done this to him.
He was well known and well liked in this community where he served as a police officer for more than 3 decades.
He was an absolute great man, and this is just devastating to all of us.
Roads closed, the community on high alert, the law poured in. Lock and load, cop killers on the loose. You'd swear it was Clarence Boddicker by their reaction.
Cops don't like me, so I don't like cops.
The immediate searches were fruitless. And how 3 men escaped, though, it was genuinely extremely worrying.
It was a zoo. I mean, they were on for days. Manhunt was for days. And I mean, everywhere from the border of Wisconsin to going down towards Chicago. It was non-stop. And we were so, like, even as patrolmen, the one thing that people don't understand, like the internal workings of law enforcement, you do get like detectives and there is sergeants and if it's not patrol is always looked at as if like they're the babies of the bunch and they don't get respect, even though they're the first responders and they do a majority of the work. So when it comes to something like this, normally it's like you feel like you're shit on it. Like you're stupid when you got detectives telling you what to do and what not to do. It's like, dude, I've been doing this how long? I know what I'm doing. So in this case, though, we wanted to make sure we didn't fuck anything up. We were walking on eggshells. Man, I want to make sure if I see a car and it's got, 2 white guys and a black guy in it, and we didn't have any description outside of that. That's all we had. And we have probable cause to pull on the car. That probable cause better be something serious and not just something like a license plate light out to pull somebody over and then it gets tossed in court and they all go walking free. So we were unbelievably stressed during that time, wanting not to fuck up any investigation that would lead to the righteous arrest of 3 cop killers. So from a patrol officer standpoint, man, it was a horrible first few weeks of this murder investigation.
Slipping through the extensive nets set up in Small Fox Lake. Joe became a hero throughout the town. There were signs of Blue Lives Matter flags, all that.
Joe was my best friend, my world, my hero, the love of my life for the last 26 and a half years.
He was probably murdered as part of, the war on cops. That's what some people were thinking. There were vigils. His funeral, there were hundreds. But no suspects. Yet. Fox Lake, in the meantime, was under lockdown. Leads, they had him. Fake suspects, they had him too. One woman told how 3 men emerged from a field and tried to steal her car. The likely suspects,
Yeah, I was working on that night. We got that call out, and I think it was over on Route 120. I think where it was. Myself and Joey were working, and we hear the call coming out, and because we were scanning Isburn and shit at the time, and we did nothing. When we heard this, we were like, I think it was Lake County who stopped this car or whatever, or heard this call come out. We were glued. We did nothing for hours. So our shift from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., probably a good 10 hours or whenever that call came out, we sat and just were car to car listening for updates on the radio and nothing. It was just more fucking stress.
She said. She was later found to be lying about that.
Several hours were wasted here today.
All right, so that was Chris Cavelli. I believe he's a sergeant now with, or he's a commander with Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, or Lake County. And this is George Falenko. This is my former chief of police. Now, I don't want to discredit George too much just yet, but I want you to keep in mind, this was the man who was on TV every fucking day giving updates to the public for 2 months. Now, when it comes to people hating the police, I'm going to give you more of a reason than you've ever had to hate the police after you found out what George did to you, the taxpayer, at the time. So keep that in mind as we go forward. All we know at this time, or what we were told, is 3 men shot and killed, Gliniewicz, cop killers, and we're on the hunt. And at the time, we kind of had our issues with George. I mean, I had known him for several years at this point. He was like my mentor. He let me do whatever the hell I want. I was given constant perks of the department, constant positions, new squad cars, FTO positions, a pension board, a union president, fucking a liaison for media. He allowed me, gave me permission to be in some documentaries and shit. So he always had taken care of me until right around this time when I found out some other stuff, and the tail end of this, things started to come unraveled about George, and my idolization of him completely knocked him off of a pedestal. This was the beginning of where I saw corruption in my department. So this was September. A year later, a year and 2 months later, this man would tell me, resign or I'm going to fire you. Keep in mind, this was the start of that journey.
3 suspects, they're going to talk to people they know, hopefully, right?
They always talk.
Eventually, though, they did find something. They discovered Joe's gun. It was actually found right by his body. No DNA or fingerprints are found on it, though. Well, none, not Joe's. That was weird, though, right? His gun was found right beside him. And they're like, I mean, the community breathed a sigh of relief. Like, whew, you know that there wasn't a killer with a cop's gun on the loose. But it was a bit like, huh? The search continued for these three men. $50,000 were offered, as a reward for the capture and conviction.
At the time, they set up, Lake County Major Crimes Task Force set up their command center at Fox Lake Police Department. Probably within 2 weeks, the command center was moved to our police department. the Round Lake Park Police Department. And if you look online, the Round Lake Park Police Department is an old building, and it's not very big. And the building, if you kind of look from pictures online, you'll see the building this is extended because it was a trailer. They actually, it was fabricated. It was a real piece of shit police department. You could push the door in and break the electronic lock open if you wanted to. We moved it to our conference room. So no longer did we have access to the fridge, the break room, anything else. We had Lake County Major Crimes Task Force in there from the mid-September all the way through November for when this thing would finally come to head.
Of them. Joe was a hero, not just in Fox Lake, but across the country. Honored. One of the good guys murdered by one of the bad.
Yeah, this funeral was insane. I will say, right around this time, and I'm thinking he was buried. He couldn't have been buried on the 15th. That would be 15 days later. We had a plaque. There was a plaque on our back door where we, as patrol, entered in and out, and the plaque was honoring Gliniewicz. It was a picture of him, end of watch, fallen date, this and that, blah blah. It was up there for several days, and then one day it was taken down. And we didn't know why. And we started to go, what's that all about? And then after we kind of buzzed a little bit going, why would they take that down? What is going on here? It was mysteriously put back up again. Hindsight now, looking back on it, they didn't want us to assume shit that they were already in the midst of finding out or fabricating.
Bad guys. Was he, though? When Joe was killed, his entire record was released.
Now, if we're going to get into this, because this is the second half of this, I'm going to ask you to start thinking critically. I'm going to offer information that I know, that I was privy to hearing from other people who were firsthand involved in the case, from what we witnessed, everything. I stopped watching this, and I haven't seen any of this because every single G.I. Joe documentary vilified this man. I have my personal beliefs about this, and I'm going to put them out there, and you make a decision. I'm not defending him. I just don't think that this man was the monster they made him out to be, and I think that there's massive corruption issues in Lake County, Illinois, and I'm going to piece them together for you as we go.
Some of it good. A lot of it not so much, to the point where some people said if they knew this about Joe, there was no way in shit they would have sent their kids to the Fox Lake Police Explorer program. No way.
Now I want to start with that. Right around this time, this had to be end of September, beginning of October, we get a department email memo stating we were threatened. Folenko put out a memo to all of us that if any one of us starts to discuss things we hear in passing, we were not given permission access to the front of the PD building where records was, where our conference room was, where chief's office was, the soft interview room was there. We were not allowed access up there as police officers in our own department. Folenko told us in an email, and I'm paraphrasing, and he literally threatened us with criminal prosecution if it is found out that any of us left the PD and told our girlfriends, wives, friends, anything we heard from within those walls. That was the start of us going, what the fuck is going on?
Hell, they'd want their kids around this guy. From 1985 to well into the 2000s, he got letters of appreciation again and again and again. Sometimes from the public, about just being a sound lad. And other times from other police departments, about he helped them in various different ways. If you go through his personnel file, the first half of the over 130 pages is basically, thank you for your assistance, Joe Gliniewicz. And that was the side of Joe the public knew. And it was the side of Joe, the police were pushing after he was killed. Inside the police department, though, there was story was just... It started not long after he joined. Small potatoes. He'd often be late for work, get written warnings, pull a sickie when he was not so sicky. He didn't complete reports properly. He missed meetings. He was suspended a number of times, just for, a day at a time. Once he was found passed out drunk in his truck, put under trial. He was reprimanded once for...
None of that is uncommon. My former commander, Lepe, couldn't write a fucking report in English if his life depended on it. He also was brought up on disciplinary charges for watching pornography, allegedly, on his department-issued iPhone, which miraculously got him to drop out of the lawsuit we were all involved in, and then he started disciplining us. We've had several guys throughout the other years, who would go to and try to hook up with women on domestics that they found the hero complex for. Lots of guys getting just relieved from DUIs. We had one police chief, Doug Larson from Round Lake Beach, who mysteriously showed up one day with a big, huge cracked dent bumper on his squad car that people kind of assumed, he got a DUI for it, but nothing ever happened. This shit happens all the time. All the time. The petty stuff that isn't really so petty when you come down to law enforcement is a common thing. This is where I started to go, and this was everything that I'm piecing together, or I pieced together months, if not years after the fact with the Gliniewicz investigation that just did not make sense to me. One of the things that started to make sense to me or started to really confuse me is we glorified him. We celebrated him to the highest standard of hero at the time of his death, his murder. But all of a sudden, and it was in November, the press conference that was given where my police chief, George Falenko, went before a national stage and started to expose a lot of the things that Gliniewicz was doing, his his disciplinary history. I always started to ask, why are they vilifying him? I don't understand what they're doing. And it gets worse.
For not handing out enough traffic citations, only half of what the others did. Which I will say, that's a load of shite. In 2002, in light of recent course of events, whatever that means, but I think I can guess, I'll get to it, he was busted down to sergeant. See, he had threatened to shoot a dispatcher and dump her in the lake. Honestly, it goes on. Like I said, the first half of his file, essentially, lovely stuff, compliments. Second half is pure shite.
This is where I always thought, this is where it goes into this part. Now, for those of you who remember, and I don't know what he's going to play, we had a beloved hero. We had a plaque on the door. One day the plaque is gone. Several days later, the plaque is back up. We had, 20 plus Lake County Major Crimes Task Force investigators in our department all day long. What we later found out is they were doing the deepest dive possible into every aspect of Gliniewicz's personal life. And I think he's going to get into it here. And we're going to talk about that in a second.
In 2009, it culminated with anonymous members of the Fox Lake Police Department writing a letter to the mayor listing everything Joe had been doing, including having inappropriate sexual relationships with subordinates, sexual harassment, pressuring subordinates into sucking his pecker, cheating on his wife, getting kicked out of bars, grabbing women's breasts at parties. The people who wanted to expose that, they were the real good cops. So quite the history. Half of it pretty decent. The other half dog shit, and I couldn't give two shits about the decent part. Things came to a head in March 2014. A new village administrator, responsible for village funds, budget, all that. She wanted to look into the Police Explorer program to see where the finances, the money was going. You can guess what happened next. Joe was using the Explorer's post as his own personal piggy bank. His mortgage, his vacations, his children's college funds. Hey, you need money to fix your car? Here you go. He was flashing the cash. He wasn't diverting the money into his own bank account, but he was spending it like it was. So when the admin, they wanted to see bank statements, they wanted to see receipts. Joe freaked out.
Yeah, if anybody's ever known any women who are involved in any type of law enforcement village admin, they're bitches. They really are. Everything he wrote just there, I can apply off to several women who I've known in village administration positions, trustees, mayors. It is what it is. Women in power, it's not a good combination. So again, nothing of what he's saying right there. It's just talk, and it makes sense to me.
And it wasn't just him. His family were all too aware of what he was doing. They were enjoying the benefits of it. He began asking for money from one of his sons to put back into the account. He wanted to try and cover it up by saying the Explorer's account gave out loans, and then they'd be paid back. He began to panic more and more. He wanted to arrest her for a DUI. He wanted to plant drugs on her. And he mentioned a swamp to the south where he knew where to hide things. He also contacted the leader of a motorcycle gang about having her,
They were talking about it at the time. So this is going to be post-November. And there was a press conference where Falenko gave it, and he went up and he started to vilify everything. He exposed the porn sites that he was on. He exposed some scandal where Gliniewicz's son apparently got married, but it was supposed to be, it was one of Gliniewicz's girlfriends. They had said at the time that he embezzled a few $1,000s in the from the police explorers fund. I want to piece together things that were happening during this time. One of the things that were happening during this time was four guys, or let me see, Raymond Willoughby, Damon Ward, Daniel Cooper, they're plaintiffs of the Village of Fox Lake. They were all taken into custody. One of the things that we were told up there, now my direct contact into this was a man named Tom Rudd. He was Lake County coroner, Tom Rudd. And I'm going to piece this together as best I can for you. Tom Rudd said on scene that he knew that this was a suicide and it wasn't a murder. And he called then Mark Curran, who was Lake County sheriff. Now, I always wondered, why did the Lake County sheriff not take control of this investigation? Why the Illinois State Police? Why did they not do it? Why did my police chief, who I've talked about this before, and it's documented, he never had any police experience before. He was a dispatcher. He was in charge of Lake County's dispatcher. He had been in several lawsuits before. He was an admin commander at 46 years old. He decided to become a police officer, and that was his part-time, and he was elevated through appointed positions. He had no legitimate police experience, but he climbed all the way up to Lake County Major Crimes Task Force. The rumor was that this was really an FBI investigation at the time, that the FBI was using Gliniewicz's death to investigate shit that they wanted to in the town. And I don't have any proof of that. This is just what I was told. Rudd had said that all of these men were swooped up. I guess they were kept for about a few days, locked up. Their mouth was swabbed for DNA, and they had no legitimate ties to this. This was a lawsuit that these guys filed. And out of it, the commander of Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, George Falenko, was dismissed from this lawsuit. So that was always something that was really odd at the time. Rudd, I'll piece this together for you too. Rudd was involved, his first partaking in any case was the Melissa Calusinski case. Melissa Calusinski is currently serving 31 years in prison. She was convicted in 2009 of killing a toddler, Benjamin Kingen. Mini Suvi Daycare was where this took place. I'm going to play this small clip. This is Erin Moriarty from 48 Hours. She has done 3 investigations on this. Melissa Calusinski in 2009 confessed to killing a toddler. I'll play this for you.
I'm Erin Moriarty with 48 Hours. Before you see this week's show, I think there's some information that you need to be able to assess guilt or innocence. First, the case in a nutshell. There's a young daycare worker who is accused of killing a baby in her care. She says she didn't do it, but she told the police she did. Now there's new evidence, exculpatory evidence, that indicates she may be innocent, but there's that confession. Why would she confess? So
the reason why this made news recently, there's been 3 48-hour interviews on it, is when Tom Rudd, the Lake County coroner who first appeared on the scene where Gliniewicz was dead, he discovered x-rays that were manipulated, allegedly, by someone that belonged to the Benjamin Kingen case. And he put them out. He changed the cause of death from Benjamin Kingen from homicide to undetermined. Tom Rudd is in all of these all these 48-hour investigations. He talks about the fact that Benjamin Kingen had a scabbed over, pre-existing bump on his head, and his professional medical belief confirmed by numerous other coroners and doctors that Benjamin Kingen was not killed by Melissa Calusinski. That's Tom Rudd. Keep in mind, he's going to play a role in this.
I've asked Richard Barber, who's one of our editors, who I would bet has seen this interrogation tape more than even the prosecutors. When you say, I mean, you've been looking at it for months.
I've seen it a lot of times, yep.
And I want to give people some idea of what you've seen in it. First, we should point out that this young woman has tested 74 on her verbal IQ.
Listen to Melissa after she seemingly confessed as she tries to explain to detectives her confusion.
I can't believe people actually believe I do this and thinking that I'm like trying to lie and hide stuff. And it's so hard for me because I have had problems in my past to actually explain things literally. Like, it takes steps for me and it takes a while for me to explain because I'm very slow at some things to explain. And I really am. I've been through that my whole life. But everyone at the daycare knows I would never do that. I've worked with ages from infant to like pre-K. That I was 7, so.
The fact remains, you did do it.
I did do
it. It was an isolated incident, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And now take a look at what she says. After all of this, she still thinks she's going to go home. She thinks nothing's going to happen to her.
I'm just kind of curious how much more.
Not much longer. We're on the phone right now.
This entire, most of it, the entire interrogation is available up on YouTube. Melissa Calusinski. This man, who's in the bottom of the screen, you can see for 9 hours, she denies she had anything to do with it. Over 70 times, she said she had nothing to do with this. She was in a room with this man and another police officer, cornered, not allowed to leave, denied her phone call. Well, she didn't ask for it, so they didn't offer it. No bathroom breaks. And after 9 hours, she said, and it's on YouTube, where she says, I'm just trying to make this sound like you guys need to hear it. They forced her, they bullied her into confessing to killing Ben Kingen with zero medical evidence at that time that she did it. This man is George Falenko, my former chief of police, with no police training, no police background, an investigator by appointment. That is it.
We're trying to get this done as quickly as possible.
Because I just want to go home and spend time with my parents and my puppy.
And you'll see in this hour, I even asked her, did you really think, after admitting that you had hurt a baby, that you were going to go home? And I think she did, because it was a story to her.
You can really see that maybe what she's doing is she's changing her idea of what the truth is. The truth is what these guys want her to say before she's allowed to leave.
And that's what happened. So the point I'm getting for there is we have to set the stage for the intent of the investigators on the Gliniewicz case and Tom Rudd's position at the time. So we have that, and we're going to continue on. When it comes to this, Rudd held the position that Gliniewicz killed himself from day one, hour one. We have to keep going.
So maybe he tried to borrow money to cover this up from the wrong people. And it ended badly. Something ended badly for Joe, probably related to the fraud. That was the word. And the word is the bird. The investigation into who those 3 men were continued for another 2 months. Until...
It had to do with the things like the three guys who were picked up and they were held, all of this. Over the months that the investigation happened, like I said, we were all on eggshells, didn't know what was going on. And then when that day came up for the November press conference and we had heard from start to finish the embezzlement of money, we were told it was a few $1,000s. What Rudd had told me after I left the agency was that the FBI had shown him 2 or 3 of Gliniewicz's 4 bank accounts, and there was close to $250,000 in there. That's what he had said. I have no way of proving that. None whatsoever. It's complete hearsay. That's what Rudd told me. Rudd told me him and Folenko were at odds from day one on this investigation. Folenko already sat there and faced embarrassment when it came down to Melissa Calusinski, where he put a woman in prison, a little girl, with no medical evidence on her conviction, and now he was about to be undermined. If you're following the Melissa Calusinski case, it's going all the way to hopefully you're going to have J.B. Pritzker, our governor of Illinois, giving her a pardon for now the evidence being completely compelling that she's innocent. So now you had Tom Rudd, Coroner Tom Rudd, exposing Folenko not once, but twice, and the embarrassment he must have suffered at that. We're going to see what happened at Rudd after he wound up doing that.
Early November 2015, and that was when the police, well, they were ready to announce their findings.
This is Folenko. This was the day we were all glued to our television set for the press conference of hearing. That's Chris Covelli. He's, I believe he's still a commander with Lake County.
We're here this morning to wrap up the investigation into the death of Lieutenant Charles Joseph Gliniewicz. This extensive investigation has concluded with an overwhelming amount of evidence that Gliniewicz's death was a carefully staged suicide. We have determined this staged suicide was the end result of extensive criminal acts that Gliniewicz had been committing. In fact, he was under increasing levels of personal stress from scrutiny of his management of the Fox Lake Police Explorer Unit. We have the highest degree of confidence in the facts which led us to this conclusion, which Lake County Coroner Dr. Rudd will confirm. The investigation found...
That's Dr. Rudd. Now, Tom Rudd had also told me at the time, in between September and this announcement, Folenko was on TV all the time. All the time. It was almost daily. And at one point, apparently, and again, I can't back this up. I can't prove this. This is only what Rudd told me. He said the FBI pulled Folenko in their office, or they came into his office, wherever it was at the time. And in front of Rudd, they told him, shut your mouth or we're going to charge you. Apparently, the FBI was allowing Folenko to pursue this investigation this way. And what I was told is that he was giving too much information too fast, whatnot. However, they didn't like it, and they threatened him with a criminal arrest on felony charges. That's all I was told. Like, again, I said what we had we had a beloved hero. And this is something that always bothered me. We had a beloved hero in the Fox Lake community in Lake County. And if he kills himself, I always ask this question. Why? Why would other officers feel the need to go through his porn search history, his swinging with his wife, his alleged affairs, all of this? And what we were told was it was not, if you steal $1 as a cop, that's unacceptable. But it was a few $1,000s is what we were told. Why would you just not sit on that quietly, let this man die, and just leave it alone? Why did they make him this egregious fucking villain? Unless they themselves had something to hide.
Gliniewicz had been stealing and laundering money from the Fox Lake Police Explorer post. This had been occurring over the past 7 years. Gliniewicz was also found to have forged...
To occur $250,000 over 7 years from a police explorer's fund never made sense to me.
...signatures and official documents. Thousands of dollars were used by Gliniewicz for personal purchases, travel expenses, mortgage payments, personal gym memberships, adult websites, facilitating personal loans, and unaccounted cash withdrawals.
Now, that can't be that much. What's a porn site? $20 a month? Well, it's a vacation, $1,000. You know, it's not $250,000. My thought was, there's a drug ring up in Lake County, Illinois, from higher ups in the police department. And I can't prove it. I can't prove it at all. I can't tell you that before I got on with the Round Lake Park Police Department, allegedly, this is what I was told, there was an evidence break-in to our evidence locker, and drugs were stolen. And when that happens, the Illinois State Police is supposed to come in and do an investigation. But my partner at the time told me that the words out of Falenko's mouth was, what happens in-house stays in-house. It was always sus. It was always weird that our Commander Lepe, whose wife and kid lived up in our town, that he would always leave on his third day off after spending a little bit of too extra time in the police department. We all left, and he would go down to Chicago to spend time with his other family down there, allegedly. And we always wondered, were we doing drug busts on people and that evidence wasn't making its way into the locker room? And it was making its way somewhere else? I don't know. This is all just conjecture on my part and just assumption based off of the qualities and characteristics of some of the people I worked with. And again, I can't prove any of this. I'm just giving you stuff that I experienced at the time that never made sense to me.
He had shot himself to try and cover up the crimes, or we saw no way out. Joe staged his death to look like there had been a struggle, a fight.
Now, here's how they said he staged his death. I will never forget this. This is after. It's after the November press conference. We finally get our conference room back, and I'm in there with lunch, and Matt's in there. We're on day shift. So this is 2016 at this time. I went to day shift in January 2016, and Falenko's bragging because now some CNN or something wants to do him as an investigation for this thing, and Falenko loved to talk. You think I love to talk? That man loved to talk more than I do, and he started bragging about the case and what he told us, because you put a quarter in him, the man will tell you anything. He said, and this is now you as a civilian, if you're a firearm aficionado, you tell me this. Gliniewicz shot himself twice. This is what they're alleging. Now, a couple things we found out in the long one is they went through Glenniewicz's desk at work. They conveniently found some cocaine, allegedly, in his desk drawer that he said that he was going to plant in that village admin's car if he pulled her over. We were missing cocaine, allegedly, from our evidence locker. And our department was the one who was doing the investigation into Gliniewicz. Again, just putting pieces of shit together. Wouldn't be too much of a stretch for one investigator who's corrupt, who wants to cover shit up, to take drugs that Falenko gave him, plant it in Glenniewicz's desk to vilify him even more, but whatever. We were told with a 45 caliber, he had a 45 caliber Glock. I don't know if it was a Model 21. Model 21 is a big handgun. I carried it with my first department. I hated that gun. It was too big for my hands. I carried the Glock Model 40, or the 40 caliber, the Model 22 after that, and then a Sig Sauer 357 P229. The Glock 45 caliber, big bullet. We were told Gliniewicz sat there and took the gun, pointed it at his vest, and at point blank range, fired it into his vest. Now, I am not somebody who's ever taken a round. Not even to the vest. I have to imagine the impact. Number one, the psyching up you have to do to shoot yourself in the vest at that distance. That would be insane. You get that concussion blast into your body. And they said that he did that to make it seem like they hit him first, because then he took the vest right in this area where there's no coverage, and he put it up here and he shot himself again. This is me. I call complete fucking bullshit. And here's why I call complete bullshit. is at the time, Falenko was talking about, yeah, he was one of the toughest guys ever to be able to take that kind of gunshot. I was going to have his autopsy tested for steroids. And I was like, Chief, because I was on TRT, it doesn't dull your nerves. You can put all the steroids you want in your body. You're not going to dull the sensitivity to your skin, your nerve endings, your muscle, your organs. It's not going to happen. What kind of person, and they, to my knowledge, they tested him for autopsy. They had no drugs in his system, because that's what Falenko said. You shoot yourself in the chest and you feel that 45 caliber blast you in the side, and then you go, I'm going to do this again. And you do it right here. And it's right-handed. I don't know. That's what we were told at the time. They went so far out of their way to vilify this man, when all they had to do is say he committed suicide, he was caught embezzling, he stole $3,000 from the Police Explorers Fund. It would have been a disgrace to him as a decorated police officer to go out this way, so Joe chose to kill himself. That would have been it. But why? Why dig into his porn search history, his inappropriate relationships, the sex he had with people? Why did they vilify this man? Unless it was to take the light off of other people.
He ditched his stuff around the bush, shot himself, though the armor dampened it, called for backup, and when they arrived, he shot himself again. But he wanted his death to look like this.
Why, you gotta be some kind of great cop. Come in here all by yourself. You probably don't think I'm a very nice guy. Do you?
Buddy, I think you're slime.
There were no signs of a struggle actually on Joe, although he kind of threw his shit around. His clothing, like, for example, was just fine. There was no defensive wounds on him. In fact, he was in great condition, other than being dead. Now, there are still those out there, though, who don't believe that he killed himself. You know, there's some kind of conspiracy. Ooh, you know, fucking reptoids did it or something. He was gonna, you know, expose chemtrails, the hero, and then Majestic 12, who live under the ice, they came out and hacked his bank account, and then they killed him, you know. Ooh.
Wholeheartedly believe he was murdered. And to say otherwise.
Now, I will say this. I spoke to Joe's son probably a year after this happened. I listened to him, and he elevated his father. It was a very, very, very good conversation. I felt empathy for him. I don't know if he's going to show it. They went after Melanie Gliniewicz with criminal charges almost immediately after his death. I'm just posing this question. Why didn't you let this man die? Why did they vilify him to a level that I have never fucking seen compared to some of the things that the Lake County police have done? The Lake County area. There have been cops who have been DUI, 1050, crashed their car, and it gets covered up. There have been cops. We had a cop, Dave Westergren. I'll fucking name names. I don't give a shit. He used to sit there and have a pattern. When I first got on, I worked with him for about a year and a half, 2 years. He gets fired. He gets fired because he would pull over Hispanics. And what he would do was he would sit there and tell them, here's your bond. Now, no valid driver's license at the time, I believe the bond was $100. It was 10% of $1,000. He would tell them it was $200. And he would pocket $100. Or what he would do is he would float himself loans. Apparently, the investigators in our department found in Westergren's locker, they found a ton of bond sheets. What he would do is, on his day off, he would take all the bond sheets, put them in the locker, take the money he got from the bonds, go out that night, spend it, and then when his paycheck came back in, he would cash it out, replace the bonds, and then drop the bond. That never made national news. He was fired. He was never criminally charged. He was allowed to go to another police department and become a cop. So why? Why did they vilify this man so bad? I've always wondered.
Disrespectful, hurtful, irresponsible.
I don't believe that it was suicide.
I believe it was a hoax perpetrated on the community. I think there is something very deep and very corrupt going on here.
I do too, because I want to back this up for a second. When it came down to, like I said, Tom Rudd, this is a conversation I had with Mark Curran. Curran is the former sheriff, and I didn't like the fact he was running for Illinois State Supreme Court judge, and I had a big problem with it. Here's my conversation. You can pause it and enlarge it. And I attacked him openly in 2021 on an article where I sat there and flat out said, this man does not deserve to be a U.S. Supreme Court judge after his failure with both the G.I. Joe Gliniewicz case and what happened in our department. Now, remember, less than a year after our G.I. Joe Gliniewicz, my department is involved, and there's a video I did on this, where our body cameras are recording us 24/7, nonstop, in the bathroom, taking shits, inappropriate, reading our texts inappropriately, all this stuff. And we filed a federal lawsuit against our department, against George Folenko. So I asked him in all this, and he talks about Tom Rudd. And I talked to him about these. He says he spoke to the media about all this stuff when it came down to my case and everything else. And I said, you were the fucking sheriff. Fucking sheriff, and you didn't do anything. I never understood that, why he couldn't pull rank. He's the sheriff of the county. This was one of the biggest things that I'm going to play that happened to Tom Rudd. Now, remember, Tom Rudd was the coroner, and he was running for re-election. Now, for those who don't know about running for election, you have to get signatures to get onto the ballot. When I ran for Cook County Sheriff in 2018, if you were a Republican or a Democrat, to get on the ballot, you needed 3,282 signatures to get on the ballot. You need about 4 or 5 times that many because your opposition is always going to challenge them and get you booted off. There was a candidate that ran as a Democrat during the same time I did. I ran as a Republican. He had 11,000 signatures. This is what I want to stress upon you. 11,000 signatures. He needed 4,000. The current sheriff, Tom Dart, his team contested his signatures. He didn't make it on the ballot. So what's 11? You're saying 8,000 of those signatures were bad? That's 8,000. Listen to what they did for Rudd for, I think, 11, 12, or 13 signatures.
He was one of the first people to publicly say that Fox Lake Police Lieutenant Joe Gliniewicz staged his suicide. Well, tonight, the former Lake County coroner is in trouble with the law under indictment. Eyewitness News reporter Liz Nagy's in Waukegan.
An independent Illinois appellate prosecutor says the charges passed down by a grand jury today are the result of an investigation that began more than a year ago with questions from the community about the controversial former Lake County coroner's bid for re-election.
This, to me, is a suicide.
Now, Rudd embarrassed the shit out of Folenko at that press conference and at the time of the initial death investigation. Rudd had previously embarrassed the shit out of Folenko by saying that Melissa Calusinski did not kill this child, which was one of Folenko's crowning achievements at a conviction for a death investigation he had done.
Dr. Thomas Rudd called it as he saw it.
I think he knew there was the possibility of incarceration.
Ruling Fox Lake Lieutenant Joe Glinowicz's high-profile 2015 death a suicide was just one of several controversial calls from Lake County's former coroner.
When he sees...
Now, this is Jed Stone. Jed Stone I met for the first time in 2003, and the man beat me in court fucking beautifully. We had a it was the first time ever I had massive respect for a defense attorney. This man is a fucking killer defense attorney. Jed Stone got 2 guys off on a drive-by shooting that we did because two Lake Villa police officers who took these guys into custody didn't articulate that they handcuffed these 6'5" behemoth football player brothers into handcuffs for officer safety. And that little teeny tiny thing, Jed Stone got them to admit on stand, well, why did you handcuff my clients? Well, we heard Round Lake Beach say there was a shooting suspect. And because they didn't say, well, it was for officer safety, these guys were 3 times our size, could have beat the shit out of us, and we were looking for a drive-by suspect who fit their vehicle description and them. He was just a brilliant defense attorney. He's also defending Marnie Yang. Keep Marnie Yang into consideration for a second.
Science and medicine tell him what the truth is of a case. He speaks that truth to power.
We today brought to the Lake County Grand Jury 5 counts of indictment against Thomas A. Rudd.
5 fucking signatures for the Lake County coroner because 5 illegible signatures because you come to me, right? And I say, hey, you're running for Lake County Coroner. Can I have your signature? I go, yeah. And my name's Dominic Izzo, but I put James DeMonico on there. That's fraud, right? But you now are held criminally accountable. Someone tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't, unless you're being paid back for your involvement in exposing corruption.
A 5-page grand jury indictment alleges Dr. Rudd committed perjury in petitions for his re-election bid.
Before the hearings could begin, Rudd withdrew.
So Dr. Rudd never ran for re-election. After reading the indictment, Rudd's attorney believes this is political payback for some of Rudd's rulings as coroner.
Today has absolutely nothing to do with anything political.
It had 100% shit to do with political. That man's a scumbag fucking liar. He just is. He worked too closely with Felenko not to have that shit rub off on him.
Dr. Thomas Rudd is not in police custody. He is expected to turn himself in alongside his attorney tomorrow morning in bond court. Prosecutors say.
So that was February 15, 2017. Not even 2 years after Gliniewicz's investigation, right? I said Marnie Yang, and anybody can research her. Marnie Yang is sitting in prison. She's sitting in prison for killing. She murdered Sean Gale. Sean Gale's, apostrophe S, his pregnant girlfriend, Ronnie Reuter. Sean Gale was a member of the 1985 Chicago Bears football team, the Super Bowl championship team. Ronnie Reuter, allegedly, was one of Sean Gale's many girlfriends, and she was 9 months pregnant. Marnie Yang, allegedly, she's about 5 feet tall, goes to Ronnie Reuter's home and guns her down one day. Big investigation. It lasts, I believe, over a year or whatnot. And one day out of nowhere, she chooses to confess to her best friend, who was wearing a wire, and she knew it, that she committed the murder of Ronnie Reuter. I have no proof of this. I have no proof. I have been part of an investigative team that was looking into the death of Ronnie Reuter to vindicate Marnie Yang because of my connection to George Felenko. I've seen 700 pages of evidence that prove Marnie Yang didn't commit this murder. I've heard testimony and evidence that says that Marnie Yang was told by George Felenko, confess to this murder, or your son's going to get ass raped in juvie. And as a mother, that's what she did. The only thing that I can ever talk about when it comes down to, this is us, by the way, at the funeral for Gliniewicz. That's me right there. That's my commander. That's Lepe, who couldn't write a report to save his life, is what it is. And at the time, this woman claimed I sexually harassed her, but she was standing next to me in the picture. Very, very odd. That whole department is fucked up. When it comes down to the Ronnie Reuter case and how it investigated, someone sent me this a while ago, and I'm just going to play this for the concept of the investigation that was being done for, another murder.
The guys on the task force, the task force guys were very cliquey.
Your microphone is messing up a little bit.
The guys on the task force were very cliquey. It's like, yeah, we're better than you,
right? So
we know what we're doing. So fuck all of you.
Well, who was the commander of this task force? I mean, who was in charge of this stuff?
Funny you should ask. The commander of the task force was a former Deerfield dispatcher.
What?
Yes.
Dispatcher. How does a dispatcher get to be a commander?
Now, this is a man who was a retired police officer, investigator from Deerfield Police.
Commander of a big thing like this.
Thank you very much.
I'll play that so you can hear her question.
How it was a former Deerfield dispatcher.
What?
Yes.
Dispatcher. How does a dispatcher get to be a commander of a big thing like this?
Thank you very much. How indeed.
I mean, don't you have to have training to be leading a murder investigation?
No.
What?
Apparently, he was a former Deerfield dispatcher, left, went to work for the sheriff as a dispatch supervisor, somehow scammed his way into being chief of police of a small, quick town, and from there became commander of this task force.
Who was he sleeping with?
This guy is completely full of shit. No police experience. Never been to police academy.
Are you kidding me? How?
No.
And he's running this task force.
Yet he is police chief and in charge of the major crimes task force.
What was his name?
Look him up. His name is George.
You're going to make me take notes, aren't you? Okay.
I think it's Filanko, George Filanko. He's still a police chief.
Where?
It's some fucking hodunk town close to me. Haynesville, Illinois.
Really? Okay.
Round Lake
Interesting. Interesting. So he couldn't solve this case, so you guys had to do it. Deerfield had to do it.
Well, they'll come out and they'll only do so much. I mean, this took a year and a half. Yeah. So they did as much as they could. I'm not blaming them. Yeah. No, but they can't. They have to solve every. They're responsible for every murder in Lake County. They can't spend a year and a half on one case.
Got it.
You know, they do what they can on the case, and they move on to the next case. But they we continued, and my partner more than I continued. I mean, my partner was really obsessed with it, with the case.
So that was them getting Marnie Yang's friend to go and wear a wire and get Marnie Yang to confess to killing Ronnie Reuter, who was Sean Gale's girlfriend at the time, pregnant girlfriend, and they had no link to her whatsoever. So here's what you had, and these are the pieces of the puzzle I'm asking you to put together when you come down, and we'll finish this up when it comes down to the murder-suicide of G.I. Joe Gliniewicz, and why these small towns, the level of police corruption should blow your fucking mind. It should. And I've tried to talk to people about this for years, and nobody wanted to hear this. They want to put this information out there, but they don't want to hear anything else. You have the head of Lake County Major Crimes Task Force. You just heard it from another retired cop who said the man had no legitimate police experience, never went to the academy. There's a 1997 Daily Herald article that features Filanko stating that he got a badge and a gun, and he was told by his commander at the time, if you get in trouble, call one of your cop friends and ask him, here's a map of the town. That was the legitimacy and the extent of his police experience. Now you put one woman, Melissa Calusinski, into prison for confessing after 9 hours to killing a toddler. She didn't kill. Go watch. There's 3 48-hour episodes on it. She didn't kill him. Then you've got Marnie Yang. She didn't kill him. I've seen the evidence. From the trajectory to how the bullets are fired, to her height, to all it blows me away. But the evidence they have on her is a confession. So here you have, it's a pattern. 2 women, weak in stature, very, very, very within themselves, very timid, bullied by this man to confessing to committing crimes that they didn't commit. Then you have the Gliniewicz case. And you have Rudd, a part of both of them, at least the 2 of them. And Rudd exposes one, then the other, and embarrasses Filanko twice. You have a narcissist. You have a sociopath who's a police chief who's in charge of dealing with these criminal investigations, who's being challenged by a man of Rudd's stature. So what do? Because Filanko was unbelievably close with Mike Nierheim, who was Lake County State's attorney at the time. They go after criminally Tom Rudd for 5 signatures? Any of that make sense to you? All to vilify a man, right? All to vilify a man who, in my opinion, was probably on the way to expose some shit in Lake County that Falenko and many others were a part of.
In fact, emergency responders, when they arrived on the scene and found what they found, they immediately recognized it as a possible, probable suicide. The police knew right away they were hunting the Invisible Man. So why the extensive search?
This is the question where you taxpayers should do this. This has always been my question. If they knew day one, hour one, this was a suicide, why did they take 2 months to lie to the world, to build a story, to vilify one man, unless they were covering up their involvement in it? I'm not going to play it because I never, it wasn't knowing it was recorded or whatnot. And I have no proof of it whatsoever. I just had a man who called me many years ago who said, and this is I have zero evidence of this, not a damn one. He says that Falenko was at his wedding in the 80s, before he was a police chief, commander, anything at all. And they used to do cocaine back then. And Falenko was the guy who knew another guy where they can get him. And that's how he advanced. Again, this is all me putting out a third-person hearsay story. This man said, George is at my wedding. I've got a VHS tape. We're all at the head table doing blow. George got it from another guy named George who was Greek, whatever. And that's how he got his stripes. Because the other fire commanders up there, anybody who had brass, police, they were on the shit and George was their guy. I have no proof of that. No proof. But if we're vilifying one person out there and we never got a complete story and we're going to do stuff like that, I'm just repeating what other people had told me. I have zero proof. None whatsoever. Can't tell you. I have an audio recording of it, but I'm not playing it. That's it.
Money. Everyone there was paid, overtime a lot of them. Plus they wanted their hero cop. Well, okay, maybe I'm a bit harsh there. They did have to, cross their T's and dot the I's, and who knows, maybe they genuinely did believe a killer could have been out there and killed Joe. The death of an officer always has to be taken seriously, but if they already suspected it was self-inflicted, they certainly wanted to make a show.
Many who live in Fox Lake, who knew him, are grappling with the reality his was not a random death.
It's hard to picture him doing that. I wouldn't, it almost seems like it isn't true.
I think it's disastrous what happened.
It's disgusting that he would actually cause that whole scene.
Gone are the signs of support outside Maureen Kelly's bar.
I was just aggravated. Every ribbon I saw, I'm like, take those ribbons down.
The feeling is anger and betrayal. These officers feel betrayed. It's clear that Joe Gliniewicz did not represent all the Fox Lake officers. He didn't represent the Fox Lake community.
Why? Why did they vilify him so hard? It never made sense to me. Shooting yourself twice like that never made sense to me. Not exposing, if he had $250,000 on a cop's salary in 3 different bank accounts, but you tell the public that it's only a few thousand that he embezzled, that never made sense to me. Why did you say he had reached out to the outlaw biker gangs? No one ever talked about that. To my knowledge, there's no proof of it. I've never seen any police evidence or report on it that he was going to hire these guys to do a hit on her, pull her over for a DUI, plant cocaine in her. All when I know how unbelievably easy it is to fuck with evidence and manipulate it, especially when you're a chief of police who will not let the Illinois State Police come in and do an investigation of your inventory when somebody allegedly breaks in the locker. Way too suspect for me.
In the years that followed, wasn't over. In 2016, Joe's wife Melody was charged with multiple counts of unlawful use of charitable funds and money laundering.
Why did they go after her this bad? In my opinion, they were getting the light off of them.
There were thousands of texts between her and Joe, showing she was fully involved in the fraud, going from September 2009 until his death in 2015. Her trial, it actually hasn't gone ahead yet, though. Still waiting on that one. It was due in November 2021. As of January 2022, nothing to be found on it. And that's the story of G.I. Joe, hero cop, turned G.I. joke. Ultimately, it is tragic that Joe couldn't see a way out, even though he wasn't the person people thought he was. Obviously, the community were very upset. They felt lied to about who he really was, his real character. He wasn't a hero everyone thought. He himself was full sure he was a hero. Far from it. I guess the lesson here, the real lesson to learn, is don't give yourself a nickname if you can't live up to it. Yeah, pretty sure that's it.
Blows me away when people do documentaries or content like this and they don't look into it. And that's my 2 cents with it. It was a shit storm up there, from being told that we would be criminally charged if we talked about anything to the 2 months of lies. We were constantly looking for people and all the manpower, to the guys who were swept up off the street and illegally fucking detained, and their mouths were swabbed for DNA, all because the police could, and they knew. If this is why you're not going to get police accountability. If they knew day 1, hour 1, and you had George Falenko in charge of the Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, and he flat out shows that it's a suicide, but he sweeps up how many people in some investigation and swabs their mouth illegally against the Fourth Amendment. How is that not criminal charges done on them? This is why I'm so adamant on police corruption being exposed. And when I started to talk about this is why I can't stand other cops, because they're too stupid too. Because all they hear is, oh, you got fired for a text message. No, I got fired because I started talking about this. I started talking about Gliniewicz, Melissa Calusinski, Marty Yang, Rudd. And I was really in our body cameras. This all happened. And we suffered. I still think to this day, there is far more to the Fox Lake police lieutenant story. I think, this is just my opinion, based on what I know of the area, based on what I know of the police that are involved, I think that there's a criminal drug ring up there. I legitimately do. And I believe that Gliniewicz could have been, if not part of it, knowledge to it. And I believe he was killed for his trouble, because they probably said, you're going down. And he said, I'm taking you down with us. I'm taking you down with me. That is my belief. It makes sense to vilify him, demonize him, go after his wife, his kid. There was another woman involved with this who was chased out of state because they accused her of some shit. You heard how it went. You had a man with no legitimate police experience investigate 3 major criminal investigations. 2 women are sitting in prison right now, rotting. We're waiting on both of them to be vindicated and released. Marty Yang, her stuff is Kathleen Zellner, Making a Murderer's a lawyer, Stephen Avery. That's who's defending Melissa Calusinski, Kathleen Zellner. She's been her lawyer for the last several years. Jed Stone, again, who you saw defended Tom Rudd. He is defending Marty Yang. Illinois, the Supreme Court constantly gets this evidence and they keep rejecting it out. There is a massive, massive ring, in my opinion, between police and the courts for a criminal conspiracy up there. Just my opinion. And I may sound like I'm a lunatic, but all this other shit never made any sense to me. I don't know. That's what we lived during the time, all the way from we thought a cop got murdered and he was a hero, to his unbelievable send-off, to then they demonized him, went after his wife and son, and just crucified their reputation in the town and elevated themselves and celebrated all of the shit when we knew what they were doing and what they were capable of. And you, the general public, doesn't know this. You never know it. You just see documentaries and you see news interviews and clips and you just are told and you believe what you're told. To my knowledge, I'm the only one from that area, and I was not involved in the investigation at all. I was just in the building at the time, the entire time. And I was in the area, and people told me stuff who were involved in the investigation. That's it. I'm just repeating hearsay. That's all it is. You make up your own mind. But it always poses a deeper investigation into, and in my opinion, George Falenko is the John Burge of Lake County. He is the linchpin and the corruption of all of it. to coming back to that area. This man, my former police chief, my mentor at one time, 3 people, 3 lives and 3 reputations ruined. 2 innocent and 1 dead and very, very suspect on it. Guys, make up your own mind. You know, you can just chalk this up for entertainment purposes only in a damn good story. But it was what it was. 2015. It was one hell of a time. That's all I got on that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Comment below. Let me know what you think. Join me Wednesday nights, live 9 p.m. Eastern. You can call, you could text, you could leave me a voicemail or a voice note what you think on this. Support the channel. There's links in the description here to buy my book, Before the Badge, everything you need to know before you become a cop. It does have, if you want to read it, all of the accusations I brought to the village hall. Everything I brought to the mayor, memo by memo by memo, where I sat there line by line and I explained to the mayor the corruption that was going on in our department. And she didn't care. You can look at that too. Donate, PayPal, Cop Talk Live, and support the channel. Guys, have a great damn night. I'll see you in the next video.